At the request of secretary, he'd like the attendance of those that are on Zoom. If you're a member, I see Howie and Jim.
I got Howie and Jim. Is there any other ones?
There's no one else here.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
so,
If anyone pops in, if anyone sees anyone, just let me know.
yep,
So I can
Sure.
report it.
I'll do
Thank
that.
you.
okay. So, the first item on the agenda is to record the minutes of December 13th. Motion. Motion to approve.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Seconded. All in favor, say aye. Raise your hand. Opposed, scary. Okay, new business. It's been my policy, for the first meeting of every year to, elect a chairman for the board, so it's open for nominations.
I nominate Rick Savage.
I second that. Third, fourth. Any other nominations? Okay, well, I'll accept the nomination and then we'll have a vote. All in favor, raise your hand.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay,
We got you again, huh?
got me again. Chris is taking down attendance, so.
Tardy. Last name Tardy, T-A-R-D-Y.
Yes, it is.
Okay. All right, thank you, everybody, for the honor. Howie, I'm gonna turn the meeting over to you for your parking report and update.
Okay. I'm ready to go. Fantastic. So we've been meeting regularly. And I kind of just want to go over just a few things. Let me just get all my documents in one place here and share my screen. So share screen. Here we go. And then on here. So at a high level, this is kind of what I just want to go over with you guys, and it's super quick in the end, though it looks like a lot of bullet points. So the first thing I wanted to do was just talk about the survey data and the graphs in general. So we did the survey again this year. It was more or less the same amount of volume that we got for input and all that. I couldn't get all those numbers. I didn't do that yet. But I would say that they're very similar. So I think it's a really good comparison of last year to this year. That's really what I'm trying to say. And so I started by graphing. If you recall, last year I had graphs of all the different parking lots at different at noontime, and we could see for each day. And then this year I put the ones that were 2022 in one color and 2021 in another. So the idea here is you would look at these tails, you know, and you'd say, well, if one of the tails is longer, in this case, it means that there was more spaces available. So that's a good thing, you know. So like on this day, it's good. But overall, it's really hard to look at all of these graphs for each lot and determine what was going on. So instead, what I did was I made a summary of this, and I think this really highlights something. These were the first summaries that didn't come out so good. Here's the one that did. Okay, so here's the summary, and if you recall it, from that other graph, I'll just go back to it ever so quickly here. This graph, we had these lines here, and one of them meant that it was at 85% capacity, and the other one meant it was at 90% capacity here, or only 10% left. And so using that same philosophy now, here are, so the blue is the 15%, and the orange or red, whatever you want to call that, yellow, orange, is the 10%, and the greens are at 0%. So these are each of the lots, and the lighter colors are last year and the brighter colors are this year. So you can see, like, if you just take the main pier, for example, it just went up a smidge, so there was a little more parking, number of days where it was 15% or less, and here are the number of days where it was 10% or less. So every lot here on this side of the graph, on the left-hand side, has gone up. So it just shows that we still have a parking problem and it's increasing. However, the really good news is on the right-hand side here, if you look at these, you can see what a dramatic difference it is, between the 1 hour parking last year and the 1 hour parking this year. And the same thing, boat owners is the most dramatic, where you see the biggest change. And what, what do these ones on the right all have in common compared to the ones on the left? This is where actually they did a bit of enforcement last year. So that was really a key takeaway is, look, John and his crew were doing 1 hour enforcement, boat owners enforcement. I don't know why Harbor Drive happened to be that way. And they were, monitoring the trailer situation more than they had been previously. So I think that enforcement certainly is a huge aspect of improving this situation at the moment. And kudos to John and his group for all of his work doing that. So that's what we've come to realize. Now, there were, as I looked at this graph, I kind of thought to myself, okay, did just the cars shift from, one place to another? Did we have like the same amount of volume? Did we have more volume? What's going on here? So I looked at the noontime volume. I just did the average. So every day just averaged it out and then sum totaled all the different parking lots. And so on average in 2021, at noontime, we were hosting 175 cars. And in 2022, we were hosting 171 cars. So it was actually a slightly smaller amount of cars this year than last year. So in that regard, I mean, those numbers certainly stand up, that we weren't necessarily shifting the traffic, but certainly the behaviors were changing. And that was great in that regard. Any questions about these graphs and what that is at all? I guess the only other thing that I should let you know, if you're curious as to where all these places are, this is the boat owner, this is the tennis courts, this is Harbor Drive, number 3. This is the farmer's market, the long vehicle area. These are the different segregations we had. Trailer parking. We're calling number 7 all the blue area, the main pier. That includes a lot of the handicap parking too. And then number 8 is the 1 hour parking, and number 9 is the new motorcycle parking. I didn't really measure that. It didn't get much use, but it's nice to have available there. All right. So that's the comparison, yeah, and the graphs and everything. So action items. So at this point, we really wanted to meet with John, the harbor master, and Dave Kearns, the police officer that's helping us out with all this stuff, to further discuss enforcement, and specifically, if there's anything we can do about getting the tennis courts overnight enforcement there, because clearly that the enforcement is helping a lot. The other thing we're gonna try to figure out this over the next couple of months is the usage of the parking lots specifically, and this signage of those lots. We're still trying to figure it all out, but trailers, the trailer lot, the long vehicle lot, and the farmer's market. And then the other thing that we're considering is reaching out to different folks. I don't know what you'd call them, parking people, people that use our lots, really. The Cranberry Isles folks, we'd like to just, send a letter to them explaining what's going on and what our limitations are, and see if they can just be a little more cooperative with us. And then also with the commercial fishermen, maybe we send out a little note when somehow get a message out to them about, we're all trying to work together here kind of thing. And these are some of the frustrations we're having. And if you can help, that would be great. So that's another thing that we're going to look at trying to do. Also, something else was maybe adding a harbor master recommendation space on the public space permit so that John knows what's going on down at the marina and or has, some say in whether or not he wants that action happening. Another thing is, well, at the farmer's market, we really got to figure out stripes, rules, signs, and bike tours, whatever, however we're going to use that, RVs, bike tours, whatever we're going to do there. We don't know yet. We're just, and then the question is, what are we going to do about bike tours? Because we put them off and, maybe we continue that or not. I don't know. Tennis courts, we have to figure out how we're going to deal with continuing about overnight parking for Cranberry Isles. And then consider a survey for next year, whether or not we want to do it or if it's needed. And then write a final report and present that to the Harbor Committee and the Board of Selectmen. So those are our action items to continue over the next 2 or 3 months.
Good job. Thank you.
Great job, Howard. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Anybody have any questions? Well, we accept your report and keep up the good work.
All right. Thanks. Hey, while I've got John right there in front of me, are you able to make our meeting next Tuesday?
Yes, I'll be there.
Okay. And do you know if Dave Kearns can make it, or I'll check with him?
Yeah, we should check with him. I haven't heard a thing from him.
Okay, sorry, it's in 2 weeks, not in 1 week, in 2 weeks.
24th, correct?
Yeah, the 24th, that's right. Okay, great. Thanks, John.
Okay, good. Thanks, Howie. All right, we'll go to Seal Harbor. Request, Rodney King has got some suggestions, and Rodney, the floor is yours.
Thank you. That note. It's not just me, we talk with, people using the dock over in Seal Harbor. And, just a few issues that, we wanted to go over. These folders, these papers, the first page is just some random measurements in case anybody is interested to get an idea how, what we're looking at. The second page is what is the configuration now at the present. And then the third page is what we'd like to see happen is to shift these floats on. And I didn't draw in, but on the south side of the pier, there's a horse. And the way it is now, if you look, if anybody's into the maintenance float, it's really hard to get in and out of there because we're limited by tide anyway. We can't, there's not water there, all, for the full tide. So if anybody's into the maintenance float, it can be done, but it's really hairy trying to get in. And so trying to think about moving those, if you look at 3, moving it and putting a bridge back. I don't know how many years ago they took that bridge out. John remembers the bridge being there. And it'd be nice to have the bridge back and spread that out. What I find a lot coming in, people will, when they come in, they'll tie up right there in the middle. And I don't think it's purpose. I think they don't think this way. It's force them to spread out a little bit. If they could move it, I've got a couple issues. If they could move it north, and then maybe we can get some water down there, more than one spigot, get 2 or maybe 3 spigots down there. And that's the issue here now. I mean, there's other issues that we've got to be thinking long term. But for now, that's the issue. And I mean, we have to be thinking about the skip flow, because skip flow is overloaded. The skids are getting bigger and bigger. down there. There was one skiff there this summer. There was a big skiff and outboard and a pot hauler and a davit and everything in it, you know. That's another issue. I've got a couple of ideas, but that is something that is not gonna be done right away, but I'd like to have people looking at it and actually, that's on the 4th page. But it can't be done without dredging. And, but when, if we can move the main float north. I wondered, and I don't think I mentioned this to John, but if we could caulk it to the west of it a little bit, the end of it. We'd have to look and see what the moorings are. I've taken those aerial, the satellite. You know, I copied some of them. I don't believe the moorings would be in the way if we could move that west, the end of it west, and that would give more room for the skiff floats. But that would all have to be not me. Somebody would have to actually go down and really look at it. You may find you couldn't do it, but all these are just suggestions of things that, you know, would like to.
So, Rodney, I can remember when the main pier was split with a walkway between them.
Yeah.
Easily, and I don't know why I get changed back to what it is now. I think it makes sense to do it, but I'm also looking at the aerial for the dinghy float there, and you're proposing to put in 2 more floats or 3.
Well, it's gonna have to be long-term, because the problem is, I don't know how many here, you probably remember, Rick, and Jimmy Black probably remembers, but when they did this dock in the 80s, if you see, that's all, now they grounded out on low water.
There's no water, there's no water.
It can't be done now, it would
No.
happen, but when that was all done, that was supposed to have been removed. That was
Right.
supposed to have been dredged out, and it didn't get done.
That would be a major project. So.
Right, and that's why I say, but this is long-term, we gotta be
Okay.
thinking about it. And, or other suggestions, you know, I'm open to any kind of thing where we can get, because right now. There are so many, boats down there, especially the big rubber ones. When I go down, I have to get into somebody else's skiff to get into mine.
Yeah.
Hey, Rodney, excuse me, Rodney. I was also thinking about the same problem with the dinghies, and I was wondering if you know, and I agree with you, you know, some of those dinghies are you know, actually working fishing boats more than dinghies. And in this case, I'm wondering if you know, like in Northeast Harbor, they have a reduction on the size of the engine. Do you think that would help if the, you know, engine size was like down to 10, you know, 10 whatever it is,
I don't know if that
horsepower?
would- I don't know if that would make that much of a difference. Everybody's going to safer boats, you know, we were talking about like these Carolina skiffs, they're really a safe boat, you know, I wouldn't, I mean, it'd be kind of tough to say, no, you can't have that boat. I think.
Well,
they have-
I'm not saying anything about the boat. I'm saying the engine.
I don't know that, I don't know if that would make a difference, because we have a. Is there a length limit, John? A
14.
14 foot?
14. Yeah, there's 14-foot length limit, but there's no engine limit. And I think some of those guys won't put a 10 horsepower engine on their boat and take it out fishing. I mean, that wouldn't be necessarily, you know.
Well, maybe not. I mean, there's some older people over there and kids that are fishing. I mean, it'd be too bad to limit them if they would go out and like some of them have a, you know, a little aluminum skiff and a 10 horse or 20 horse outboard. That's, I mean, some of those, a 16-foot aluminum skiff probably isn't as wide as some of those rubber boats. You know, but that was the issue with,
16-foot skiff wouldn't be allowed in there.
no, but I mean, that's why I'm saying 16-foot aluminum is narrower than 14-foot rubber.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I see on the aerial too, there's some large rubber duckies, like center consoles and stuff in there. And should we do something like to match? I mean, obviously doesn't help the skip width, but matching what's in Northeast Harbor, making it 25 horsepower and 14 feet and getting some signage down there.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously an issue. So,
Can I make that as a motion?
Didn't they drive some over from the yacht club when it got too crowded over there?
Well, I don't know what, Stevie knows about that. I don't know what the issue was there, but yeah,
I thought they cut down on what you could bring in there, so everybody came over to the.
they may have, yeah.
That's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened this last year.
And all those people pay taxes too, so we
Yeah,
can't,
but you
we
gotta-
can't,
You can't account, there's a limit,
yeah.
so, we can't make everybody happy if we're gonna.
same problem down here.
Right,
Every place on the coast of Maine that has a dinghy dock has the same exact problem.
Yeah.
Right, but what I'm saying is, the fleet in Seal Harbor decided they were too crowded. So they drove some people out,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
Yeah, but we also got a bunch of Boston whalers that are there, because people can't get a 100 series mooring, so they're like, I'm gonna use the boat,
Yeah,
tying it up there.
yeah, you'll see that, but sailboat, I mean, 3 days.
yeah, but if are they the right length, or are they? too
Well,
long?
that, what I'm trying to say is those whalers, have a bigger engine than a 10 horsepower, so they won't want to stay there if they can't have a bigger engine. That's all I'm trying to say about
I'm
that.
not sure if the horsepower of the engine would make a difference, but he's right. I mean, I've seen where there was a big sailboat that comes in and they have a huge tender.
Yeah.
They come in, they tie up at the skip float.
Yeah.
And,
Well, no, I think anything like that is usually short term, so it's not too much of an issue. You do have the people who are down there with like a 15 whaler with a 60 on it, and
yeah,
again, if they're in there for the afternoon or something, or maybe an overnight once in a great while, no big deal. You can put some signs up, like Chris is saying, that's the start. But really, it's enforcement, because anyone down there with that boat, that big whaler with a motor, they know what they're doing. And they get away with it, they can get away with it.
yeah.
I mean, I've been guilty of it, I'll admit it, I've had my boat down there, not lately, not in the last few years, but.
Yeah.
And then when you start seeing it get crowded, you're like, okay, and I leave,
Yeah,
but
John,
some people don't.
is there room for more moorings in Seal Harbor?
No, Seal Harbor is in
Small mooring,
full status.
even,
All 4 of our harbors are full status.
even the 100 series?
There's a wait list of 30+ people, I would guess, in
if
Seal
we-
Harbor for 900.
I know it's come up, but we've never done it. If we realign Seal Harbor, would there be more space?
Don't know the answer to that. Seal Harbor is pretty well,
probably not.
jammed in there organically, and I don't know if you would gain anything by putting it all in pretty nice rows like we got here. It would be a major undertaking.
I've brought this up in years past, and I still believe in it. That if we allowed more floats, where you could double up boats in the same space, basically. And encourage it. I think it would work in both harbors. It's expensive, but it definitely,
are the floats more 4.5?
moored 4.5, and I'd like to see more down here, because some of these 40-foot floats, you could put actually 4 boats on them. If you really wanted to.
Yeah,
And, but that's neither here nor there. I think we have to attend to this, we can attend to this, respacing of the dock. I don't know if we can do anything about the dinghy situation.
now, but can you also shift it forward, shift it north?
Well, I talked with John, so John, go ahead and tell him what you think.
Yeah, no, I think it's very doable to bring the other 2 around to the other side and space them like they used to be. The unfortunate piece is it's not gonna happen this summer, is because there's gonna have to be a bid process. There's gonna have to be a 20-foot walkway bridge built.
Yeah.
So, we can plan and get everything set for it to happen in the spring of 24, but I just don't see any way that we could, get a float built. I mean,
Yeah.
a walkway bridge and everything, but
What about just moving the existing down right now?
I discussed that with Rodney, that
And
we
then
could
go-
potentially, move the other two over to the other side.
Just to help alleviate that coming off that, the
Yep.
voice was talking about. And then what is what do we have for CIP money for Seal Harbor?
I would have to look at which line that potentially might come out of, but, we should have some money in there for docks to.
And ramps,
I'm guesstimating between $10,000 and $15,000 to have that 20-foot walkway bridge built. Spent about 35,000 on a 60-footer, so I figure, about a third of that on a walkway bridge.
You wanna make, a motion, put this in action?
Yeah, make a motion that to add signage to the dinghy dock, the 14 feet and 25 horsepower. And to shift the docks north, the current docks north.
Okay. You work with, John and,
I think right off the bat, they need to be put into place how the moorings are set up. And then we can take measurements and make sure it's not gonna interfere with anything.
Yeah.
And then get them rigged to accept the docks on the other side and get them moved over, and we'll have to have the mooring guy come in and move moorings and stuff, but
can I get a second on,
I think it would. it's
I'll
very-
I'll second it.
okay. All in favor of the motion? Raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Wait, Rick, Rodney, how much space? Like on that finger float, if you went north, you have before you run it, I know Matt Knox had a mooring.
Not much,
No.
if you kept going.
If
say,
you
another
went
20,
straight
40
out.
feet, Not much, because there's more there, and plus, if you look right here, we come in there to unload.
Yeah.
And load
Just
trash.
make it, yeah.
And that's another, you're restricted by ties there too, you've only got.
So maybe further, yeah.
There is one piece missing on your current one, is that 16-foot piece that we put on the end. of that.
That's right, yeah, that's right.
If the dredging is a big deal issue, so that's not gonna happen right away.
Right.
We can probably get onto this other stuff right now.
Is there any chance that there could, be like a. Like a subcommittee or something like that we could just. Explore some of this
group.
stuff and find out. I don't know the procedures for all this.
Is there someone on the committee that could work with them, with a group from over there, come up with ideas and.
Sure,
Get some of the-
I'd say you guys come up with, you're more familiar with it than we are. And present it to John.
Yeah.
I mean, we're in agreement with your problem.
Yeah,
And I don't think you have to have a special committee. You guys still have it, use the dock, fish down there.
and
You can do a 1-year, 5-year, 10-year plan, because I mean, we're standing here watching the pier sink,
yeah,
so we're all in the.
That's been going on since the day one.
since they built it, yeah.
So if they, on that topic real quick, that hot top needs to get repaired and replaced.
Yes, the highway crew is gonna open that up in the spring and see what's going on.
So there was sand from what these guys have said and other people over the years that when they backfilled that, they used a real porous material
That's
instead of
what I
like
heard.
blasted ledge or stone. And it without getting into huge engineering piece, when they peel that up, if they see voids, can we fill that?
Concrete.
Wow, that'd be even better. Could we fill those voids?
I've had that discussion with Ben Jacobs already.
So that's gonna happen when they,
Yes, they're gonna peel it up and see what's going on under there, and if there's voids, then the concrete truck's coming down like they did in the parking lot. I think they dumped 3 trucks worth of concrete in there to fill those voids.
oh, fantastic.
Hey, you guys remember too, but they had to stop expanding that pier because they were dropping off to nowhere on the end,
Well, it caved in,
right?
and they capped
And
it off.
so that's gonna be a big issue about dredging too, whether it's gonna weaken the existing pier.
Yeah.
bulkhead, so. I'm
And
gonna-
that's what we've just got to get people
Right,
together.
it's gonna have to be an engineer and stuff, look at it, because right now, it might not be possible.
Yeah,
A lot of that dredging could be done with a long reach excavator from that parking lot. As long as it's, underneath of it's gonna support the weight of it. You know, just for the dinghy dock, just for
Yeah,
that.
I hear you, but
look, and he talked about this right here.
Right.
That was what I was thinking, if you could just pull that, because like I say, you remember it was supposed to have been done, it's just got.
That can be done shore side though. anyway.
And I understand permits and everything else, and I just want everybody to realize, I mean, I'll take any kind of suggestion, I'm just looking for some kind of an answer.
I think you'll get support from us. You guys make your proposal, work with John, he'll present it to us. Right now, it's not a big budgetary thing. It's about moving the working plan.
Yeah.
No,
But what if?
minimal expense to swap around, you know, a few $1,000s, in my opinion.
Yeah,
You know, the big expense will be the ramp. but,
yeah,
You know,
I've got one small suggestion. What about, you've got adding dinghy boats here. What about when we move this dock, just putting something off of?
Well, then you're getting, I mean, it's
You
possible,
you
but
come
you're,
up and use that. side.
yeah,
Okay.
we're just trying to keep this
Yeah.
clear.
No,
And that was just, I actually
Yeah.
have changed it since then. I've thought about going that way and coming off here, but you'd have to caulk that to the western.
Yeah, and then you get.
a
people-
dinghy dock on
Yeah.
that end would take an awful thrashing.
Yeah, okay.
And one other thing, that, when they went to reback, like, remember how they're misaligned, we have a new guy doing the setup? Their fix was to tie a rope on the ramp, so the ramp couldn't move side to side, and that wasn't a correct fix. And I think we need to have some inspection accountability this next year on that setup, because
They came back and fixed it for us. They actually came back 2, maybe 3 times, I think, right, Adam? Yeah, and
It ended up
the rope was our fix to keep it somewhat in place while we were waiting for them to adjust. So I think
The
at the
main
end,
float
we did.
still had problems all summer, and because of that tide, that sea crashes in there, I mean, it's tough to keep it. You know, I understand that, but that might be something that has to continue. Once in a while.
Will it be putting that ramp on that last float, the closest to the southern end? Is that gonna? You think it's gonna be fine there as opposed to in the middle? You know what? I just mean like with a southerly sea or
ramp
something. Is it gonna
is-
change?
The 2 floats where the ramp comes down, those 2 aren't gonna move. We're gonna take the 2 and pull them around over to the inner part. The northern end.
But it's gonna be on the,
Better.
it's gonna be on the outside end. That's where I just didn't know if you were better off with the ramp on the middle of that whole float setup rather than right on the end of it. It's gonna get.
Well, I
it's
mean,
gonna get more
I
action
think,
there
it's
that's gonna affect it.
I think it's still, as long as they guy it off right and moor it
As long
right,
as-
and, cause I was thinking, even if you had that, you still got that problem with that being in the way where this, and you'd actually have more tie-up too.
Yeah.
Which is another issue, but.
Well, the ramp plane, that float was built special, it's got more styrofoam on it, than the rest of it. Built special. If it stays where it is, it's good.
Yeah, I just didn't know on the end whether it'd get more action than it does
No.
the third float in.
Because it's built special for the ramp.
Either way, if you see that southerly come in there, you'll see it like a snake.
It's gonna move.
Yeah, either way, it's gonna move, yeah.
Okay, guys.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
How deep is it right off the end of that bulkhead?
Low tide, there isn't any water.
Right off of here?
I cannot tell you, I don't know.
We talked about it dropping off all of a sudden.
No.
Well, when they tried to build it out further,
Oh, it
it
could ramp.
relaxed when it was under construction. They had to come bring it back.
Have
We
we ever
didn't
thought
take
of,
all the stones out either. There's
ever
still
thought
some-
of doing it with pilings instead of
Yeah.
stone? I mean,
That was gonna be my concern, I was gonna bring it up, because, I use the maintenance boat a lot. Bring the boss's boat, now, there's a lot of chain that's down there right now. and What's gonna happen that way when you move them to the south, I mean, the north,
What do you mean, there's a lot of chain down
well, they're coming off the dock,
there? Oh, where they go out to moorings?
Right, so, you're still gonna be able to get in there on them 2 floats to the north, full maintenance on the inside, that's.
Maintenance, you ought to be able to.
Last when I was gonna bring up the power thing, as far as driving them there.
Well, I had, one of the drawings I had pilings in here and I kind of hesitate on that, because I think the way that sea runs in there, I think you're too
It'd be
rigid.
too tight.
I think you'd tear stuff all to pieces.
That would be my opinion.
You know,
We talked
You could have some nice steel pilings, but I think the pilot would lie. I don't know where the float would, unless there was a way to keep it, but. I'm looking at my Steve, you'd have that space, you'd have those, you'd have, right, yeah. But, and I don't know how they're anchored, I mean, do you go like from this side over and that side over that way?
Everything crosses.
Yeah, underneath the floor,
They-
yeah,
they
that's
do,
what I
yeah.
figured.
So the inside goes out and the outside comes in.
Yeah, okay, so, but, I mean, if you had a boat there, by the time that chain's going down, it's fairly deep, you're not gonna run into the.
Well, I
chain.
mean, you can see off the end there that you wanna move, you can see the chains, they do, but, you know, at high tide, they're, you know,
Yeah.
a lot straighter out. than-
Right,
But this is also, we look, and you know, we're just moving these over. We haven't spent the money on the ramp yet.
yeah,
So try it and your group come back with a report on how that worked, right?
yeah,
Or-
just shift them.
Right, so that we shipped them to work, right, and then you guys see how it works, you're down there, monitor it, tell us if that's the way to go. And then we proceed on looking into getting a ramp to make
Spread it out a
that
little bit.
the way you want it.
Yeah.
Just like-
Yeah, I'm gonna,
That makes sense.
I'm gonna kind of rush along because we got. some
Yeah,
issues to bring up, and we do have to be out of here at 6.
All right.
So
Well,
you guys
thank
can-
you, everybody.
You're gonna work as a group, come back to John, if he needs money or something, then we'll discuss it here.
All right.
Again, okay?
Very good. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for
Well-
coming, thanks for coming out and talking to us about this, Rodney.
You bet.
While we're still in Seal Harbor, Phil Lichtenstein has a quick piece about electric car charger.
Yeah, so the town was.
Phil, can you come up to the
Bill, you wanna
podium?
stand up here so everyone can.
Thank you all for your
See.
time. And from Boston, over there uses Seal Harbor quite a bit. and Things are going pretty well over there. I think the fishermen are always very mindful, and I think that's an important thing to mention. The town is recipient of a grant for the Community Resilient Partnership to install up to two more EV chargers. I'm here to the Harbor Committee to see if you have your blessings about putting it in the permitted lot above the Acadia Outdoor Center, which is a lot that's owned by the town, but all permits come through the Harbor Committee.
I didn't realize that until I talked with John, so.
Talking about the dirt parking lot
Yeah,
above the old store, that helps.
And one of the criteria for the grant is to make it available to renters. And there are renters in Seal Harbor, and the idea is many people that are renters cannot have an EV charger in their own garage. It's not something that's usually provided by a landlord, and the tenant can't benefit. But also, I think we benefit summertime, people staying at Blackwoods Campground, possibly yacht owners. And we're looking at 2 spaces. Last night during the Climate Action Task Force, Tony Smith was also there and mentioned there's gonna be a warrant article about paving the lots down here. And there was discussion about also adding hot top to that lot too,
In Seal Harbor.
in Seal Harbor.
Okay.
So that's all I can really bring to you all, but basically I'm asking the blessing of the Harbor Committee. And is that something you all would be open to in that lot?
Motion to approve recommendation. And I guess the decision would have to be made between, you know, where to put them, I guess would have to be a second thing, but a motion to.
Yeah, seconded.
I have some discussion here.
Go ahead, Howie.
I'm just curious.
It's open for discussion.
Thank you. I'm just curious about, how many vehicles do you really expect to be there? You know, like, I have no idea how this thing works. So, you know, I understand you're saying 2 spaces, but does that mean like there'll be 4 cars there because 2 cars will be waiting to use it? So there's going to be more than 2 cars ever? Or, you know, what's the limit or what's the expectation of capacity?
What we found is probably be just 2 cars, Howie. That's what's been here at Seal Harbor, I think, sorry, in Northeast, and we have another charger now on Main Street, so it'll be up to 4 vehicles could charge here in Northeast, and we don't think it's mindful to go put a 3rd charger here in Northeast, and this, we're very lucky to get the state money. So to answer your question, I don't see more than 2, and I don't see the waiting list being
something that they're gonna be banging at, but if there was, we'd have to, again, do some form of enforcement. But we can also do that as the station management. 'Cause at least the station that we have here in Northeast, we can control.
Sure.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to approve the concept of installing 2 chargers in the primitive parking lot in Seal Harbor. Okay, moved and seconded. All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed,
Who was the second on that?
Doug?
I want to thank you all for your time, and I think we're gonna do a nice thing for the community, and basically, we're looking at no cost to the town, and most of it's paid for from the state grant. Thank you, Phil.
All right. Old business, there was a possible zoning changes presented by the South Cove Group Association. Do we have that zoning proposal?
Yep, I sent it all out to you, but I have a copy of it here if you want to look it up.
It isn't something you could put up. Screen, is it? I don't know, I had that. This is, John can correct me. To me, it's the same proposal that was presented to us last fall. And, the harbor committee, basically turned it down, and we left the mooring situation up to the harbor master as it is currently written in our rules and regulations. The proposal, if I can summarize it, please correct me if I'm wrong, but they want no permanent moorings in the South Shore Cove area. And it's signed by a number of people.
But they also wanted to cover the whole town. If you have a cove in front of your house, then it's.
Yes, I agree. So, I'm gonna leave it open for discussion right now. Everybody's got an opinion, but I'm gonna leave it. I want input from you guys.
I think we discussed last meeting and we were gonna look into ordinance changes. And one of them was I brought to John about having the harbor master and or harbor committee designate areas as full. Like we do with our other bodies or harbors, and they're designated by lat longs. Or like Valley Cove, the term there is an anchorage that has no moorings to be set in it, and that's in our ordinance. So I think we're looking at having that ability, but right now we don't, without designated that it's a certain thing, but being able to say areas are fall under the full harbor category.
I agree, but we had never designated this South Shore Cove as anything, and this is a particular reference to that area. And Jim says to other areas. We sat through quite a long hearing on the reasons why we shouldn't, and it kind of fell on deaf ears when you consider the experts on our local waters are sitting right here at the board, and we basically disagreed with everything they proposed. So we turned them down, I thought legitimately. I like the idea that it's up to the harbor master and it can be challenged and brought before us. But this group has the ability to either support the harbor master or not. And my idea is that that's the way it should be.
I was just saying that their concerns are recognized, and I think we're looking at our ordinance as requested, but right now that our ordinance reads as it does, and you know what I mean? I'm just saying that I think we're looking into things, changes, and we were having discussions down the road that might alleviate concerns or have an ability to. At Right Town, we don't. So I don't think this is the time to accept this, and I don't think it's in our ordinance, necessarily to designate that area right now, but I think we're looking at options ahead.
I'd like to reinforce what you're saying, Chris, by saying that if this is accepted for one particular area, our whole shoreline is gonna be under question and up for challenge. And the irony of it is, the state doesn't recognize visibility or viewability as being a concern. Yeah.
So I sat through all the hearings and I don't consider myself an expert on South Shore Cove. I did not vote for, I appreciate John's ability to make a decision, and I think that's great, but I was not in favor of those moorings in South Shore Cove, just for the record. I do worry immensely about, these are commercial moorings. So I worry intensely about people just piling moorings on all along the shore. I don't,
I agree.
Yeah, but they have to go through John, and after, if they're commercial. After what we just went through, I think he's well aware of what the ramifications are. To me, this is just people that are just wanting, are protecting their view, and I question whether what happens if one of those houses there sells, and that guy, whoever buys it, wants to build a dock out there? And we've taken away his riparian rights. I think we're opening a can of worms.
There's really a reinforcement to what Jim said, and it was a photograph posted on Facebook, came out of the Northeast Harbor Library, historic photographs, shows 3 piers in South Shore Cove. And I can only remember one. Well, we used to ride bicycles out on it. But I don't remember, but this is definitely South Shore Cove with 3 piers on it.
okay, but that was like 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And 100 years ago, there were all kinds of things we did that were terrible, and we don't do them now for a reason.
I think the big key difference to me is commercial. It's the word commercial.
Yeah.
If it's a private pier, would I want it in that cove? Maybe not, but that's neither here nor there. That would be private. Commercial moorings is the issue, and I think when those moorings first went in there, I don't want to speak for John, but I don't know if we really thought of them as commercial. We thought, oh, there's a few moorings going in there. Yeah, that might work. I personally didn't really think of them as commercial moorings.
I agree
Now-
with you, Doug. We
now-
didn't think of it as commercial moorings because it was presented by the Northeast Harbor Fleet.
Correct.
But leases them off Clifton Dock Corporation.
But I think
Which is
Doug's,
So I think,
a gimmick.
if one of those homeowners came and wanted to put a mooring out in front of their home,
Right.
I agree.
that's pretty normal, it's, well, I have a mooring in front of my house over in Southwest, that's great. But it's not commercial, I'm
I
not
think-
renting it.
every one of those owners in South Shore wanted to put a mooring there. I wouldn't think anything of it, but I think
Right.
a corporation taking over a
I
cove
agree.
is something we don't really want, I think.
And that's happened in other coves, and
Oh, it has.
as, what we did learn from some of the stuff, that was one of the few coves that didn't have, hadn't been commercialized, monopolized. You go up in the Somme Sound, I mean, you look at your travelway, any boater knows that the mooring fields have extended over, you're going like this, like that, and, there's areas, boat yards, they've expanded way out. And that's why we were talking about the discussion of being able to designate certain areas coming up in our ordinance change as full harbors. And that by using lat and longitude and points, just like we do with Anchorage or we identify our harbors with, being able to stop the expansion in those areas. And I think also we're gonna get to the point, and I think we need to have part of our ordinance change and discussion needs to be that there's no more the grandfathering, that every mooring in the town Mount Desert waters needs to be registered and properly inspected, just like the ones in any of the harbor. And that will be done at the owner have to report himself and properly label. John has the software now to designate different areas, in the computer system. So we'll actually we don't honestly know the amount of moorings in the town of Mount Desert, our growth or whatnot. Until we get a handle on that, it's irresponsible just to let it go wide open. We
Yeah.
don't, and that's why we need ordinance changes to have some control. We don't have that at the moment. I think that's something we need to work towards.
Go ahead, Jim.
I agree with I feel very strongly about the commercial issue of what happened there. And I know it's the fleet, and that's probably commercially, that's as good as we could get, but just stop and think if some other enterprise other than the fleet wants to come along and apply for commercial space moorings for rental purposes. I mean, you just think, look at around Greening's Island. I think you see some moorings out there that are there commercially, are just there for people to come and tie up on and vacation and to be there. It's kind of like a bed and breakfast of the mooring world. So, you know, we have these coves, that one, and we have some other coves, and for people to be able to come and apply for them commercially for rental purposes is very concerning for me. And I like John's process and how we handled all that, but I think we need to add another step in there, and the commercial end of it is my concern.
Go ahead.
I also agree with everything that's been said in regards to the commercial aspect.
Just a minute, Howard.
Hi, I'm Jamie Blaine, and I was in the hall when you read the letter, so I live in South Shore Cove, so I'm flying a little blind, and I don't want to relitigate the hearing, which I thought was the first hearing was very thoughtful and I thought had some very good discussions about the future. I don't think this is an issue simply of a view. And I think there were substantive issues that were brought up. And what I said afterwards, and I went to Howie because he had given the longest presentation, and I subsequently wrote you, Rick, and also Howie, saying that I am a member of the South Shore Cove Association, but I also would like to be part, if anybody wants me, of looking at a longer term solution. I'm not a Trojan horse. I'm committed to protecting the cove, but I see it as part of a bigger issue. And I think that's what came, for me anyway, out of that first hearing. And so if there is, if there's any way that I can be a help or be a part, fully representing myself as what I am, I do think it's an issue, as some of you have said already, that is not going away.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a conflict between the Northeast Harbor Fleet and residents of the South Shore Cove totally, or is there some kind of compromise they want to make?
I don't know. Most of them, I don't know, some of them at least are members of the fleet, and happily so. I am not a member of the fleet. I think the conflict is over what happened and the way it happened. Whether it goes beyond that, I don't know.
Okay.
But it could.
Yeah. I guess I have in my mind that it's the same group being represented by two different leaders. If you understand what I'm saying.
I do. But I like to think that was a little bit put to rest at the hearing, that this is not about NIMBY. It may be for, I think there were important issues that were raised. And it takes it to a different level.
Okay. Yeah.
I agree about controlling the commercial aspect of it. But I don't think we have the right to tell somebody that they can't put a mooring in front of their house. And I see this, the way this ordinance is written, that all of a sudden we've opened a can of worms to anybody that wants to object. Doesn't say anything about commercial, they just wanna protect any empty cove or whatever. It happens to be the South Shore, but who knows what's going on the backside.
Which is an anchorage, like Valley Cove was protected. So you didn't want people putting a bunch of moorings, so people can go there, enjoy Valley Cove by anchoring. Now, if we didn't have that protection on there right now, that would be another group with a barge in there having it out. I think it's important to look and stop it. And then what they're doing is just trying to make this, hey, we're not stopping people from using it, but just not commercializing it. And then an anchorage is open to more people than anywhere else. And you know what, it would help if we had a designated anchorage closer to the harbor. People anchor right in front of the harbor, right in the traffic. They don't really know where to go anywhere. that's another area they could go. It would be helpful, definitely to the traffic.
So I just, the residents have pledged to give up their rights to moorings, not to have them taken away, but to give up their rights to moorings and docks. In order to protect the code, so I do you have a copy of the letter, I probably do.
The ordinance changes on the second page.
What are we protecting the cove from? When you say protect, if it's not a view?
Eelgrass, it's also. There aren't many coves left on this island or in the state that are not developed in any way. This was developed, and I think, I wrote Lincoln Millstein because I thought the photo was great, but the argument was wrong. We did never, there are two huge, piers in that cove, so nobody would argue there had never been, but those piers were blown out so many times that they just didn't rebuild the dock, and I don't know what happened to the others, but we just lost another dock right around the corner.
What's the board's pleasure?
I'm just gonna say that I don't think the community can support the number of moorings that are on the wait lists. And at some point, we have to, like, the fleet had, I don't remember, we had almost 200?
The fleet,
No, the harbor.
oh, wait list, yes, over 200 naughties,
And the fleet were complaining that they had, I can't remember their number.
30, 40.
30, and they wanted to accommodate their members, and I don't think it should be our job to try and accommodate all these moorings. Just can't, it's not sustainable to keep the nature of the community. I just, so I don't think we should be trying to pound these coves with moorings everywhere we can.
I think what earlier you said was commercial, and I agree with you. But I'm not up,
Well, that too.
I'm not up to protecting the cove just because the shoreline people want it that way.
I think and I think if you own a shorefront, yes, you should, it should be your right, presuming, you know, everything's in order to have a mooring in front of your house.
Yeah.
But I think we're headed to an area where people are trying to put moorings anywhere they can for commercial.
Well, we can stop that. And I have no problem stopping that. I have a problem with trying to say this place is exclusive, we don't want anything, and Chris says, you know, create anchorages, which is fine. But I just see this as a can of worms that the way this is written, we're opening the door for other problems. And if we want to control commercial, let's go for it. That's a whole different item than somebody else, a private mooring going in.
Well, and my objection is more for the commercial part of it.
And I certainly understand that.
Howie?
So I'm in agreement with the other folks here that the commercial aspect of it is the issue. And I'm just wondering, to move this along, can we like create some kind of motion that says we write something in our ordinance to you know, not allow commercial entities to do whatever we're asking, you know, whatever we're concerned about, and then have it looked over by the lawyers, but obviously we need to write that up, so.
I think we need some legal advice. And we have some legitimate concerns here. The commercial activity is a major concern. I'm very concerned about setting a precedent for the remainder of the shoreline in the town. And especially for residential use. The way this is written right now, it's kind of a specialized certain area, but it's very restrictive. And I think it oversteps the bounds of property rights and private citizens. So I'm not in favor of the motion the way it's presented, but I would prefer to have some legal advice. Jim?
I'd just like to add too, talking about setting precedent, I think we just did by allowing commercial moorings in that cove. So we have set a precedent, and I think that's what needs to be our major concern here. And come up with some language and a process with John when commercial moorings for rental are applied for, then they need to be reviewed and decide on whether they're appropriate or not.
Isn't that our ordinance call that you have to have a mooring, you have to have a boat?
Yes, commercial, not necessarily. But part of this thing, what we need to take step by step is, I think, is our resident definition, that's what we start with.
Yeah.
Change the ordinance to that, defining that at what that residency determines. And then moving forward with our designations, ability to designate area. Well, and with that, after the resident definition, we need to then address the grandfather, there's no grandfathering of moorings. So we need to get a handle on how many moorings are outside. So everyone needs to, and then we're not gonna throw it on the harbor master. We're gonna make it known and probably need to, however we can get it across, either mass mailing to tax owners or what, to say, hey, you have to register your mooring. Has to be inspected, to meet the same standards as the harbor. And it has to be, numbered or named appropriately per the harbor master designation. And then we know how many we got in what area. And then have the ability to say, we have the ability in our ordinance of a full harbor, designation for an area to say, hey, this is too many moorings in Gilpatrick Cove. There's too many moorings off from Jock Williams. I'm just using these, just using the generic examples, or off Henry R. Abel, what I mean, in those coves or the cove next to Soam Sound. And then that would give us the ability to not shut off huge swaths, but say, hey, this little area is full, and then let it up, the same determination without a mass change to the ordinance. Does that make sense, everyone?
It does.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's bringing up legitimate points, and it's this is a very impactful issue. If we choose to adopt something that's from this presentation.
So I think and just to keep things moving along tonight, so I think we're all in agreement that we're not in agreement with what's been presented.
I think we should personally deny this request. And I think we need legal advice about state law and property rights.
Yep.
And it needs to come back to us, but right now, just to accept this from that point of view, I don't think is a wise decision.
So I'll make that a motion.
Okay.
That's perfectly worded.
Can you repeat what the motion was, Bob?
Can you repeat that?
No, committee is not accepting the proposed amendment changes as presented.
That's fine.
That's the.
And I second it.
Yep. All in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And it's carried. Thank you very much.
So I just have a procedure, so that's dated July 28th, how did it?
Well, yeah,
I didn't know.
That was,
I was just here to introduce myself.
that was my first reaction too.
yeah, that was pushed out to us at the same time that the appeal was. And we decided to put it off until we started looking at our ordinances this winter. I was urged to put it on our agenda because it was put forward as a request, and we have looked it over in its current process and condition. The committee has denied it. That doesn't mean that we're not looking towards things that are in it. because a lot of stuff was brought forward in our meeting that has awakened us up. And we're working towards trying to do something better for all of the town of Mount Desert's water, not just one little area that the language in that is a little over restrictive than
Yeah,
what we.
understood. I don't think anybody knew that was coming up, including apparently you, Rick, so.
Well, the date on there kind of
Yeah,
throws a
me
monkey
too.
wrench in it, but as John said, it was, we were requested to bring it up again.
Thanks.
I'd like to, we were provided the information. I'd like to make a motion, but I'd like to see what the committee has for the resident definition, if they'd like to go with state or the town for the change to that. So we can make, so to get the motion started, so we can start a small bit of the ordinance change.
Do we want to get legal?
John's already got
Got
legal.
advice, and
Oh, on
you
the-
know,
on the
I
resident
mailed out to you guys
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry, I'm
the
thinking-
state's definition of what a statutory resident is. And it would mirror the same that the town uses for everything else. We're the only entity in town that gives you resident status for your mooring registration or using the dock down here in the winter. It says that if you're a taxpayer in town, you're considered a resident as far as those two things are concerned. Everything else in town, if you don't live in the town of Mount Desert for 6 months and 1 day, you're not considered a resident and you're not allowed to vote at town meeting.
John, this is Donna. I have a question, but did you at one point say that we're, as a harbor committee, required to hold the standard or greater, not lesser than the state for residency?
Yeah, with everything else, you're allowed to be more stringent than the state, but not less lenient.
So, and is this an exception or no? Shouldn't this too follow suit that you can't, that you're,
That's what we're trying to fix right now.
That's
Yeah.
my motion was to have that, so it feels like everyone's in the state, so make the motion that we adopt the state definition of residency to our harbor ordinance.
Second that.
Which is, again, you have to be.
You have to be have a domicile and live in
Be
it,
a voting
live in the
resident.
town for 6 months and 1 day to be a voting and be considered a resident of the town of Mount Desert.
and so there's a motion right now open for voting on regarding accepting the fact that the state residency is going to be accepted for this purpose as well. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, yes. That's what we're gonna vote on. We have a motion and seconded.
Could you repeat the motion?
The motion is to adopt the state definition of residency to our harbor ordinance.
Does that, John, is that gonna change, like people's status that that are currently registered as residents based on the old?
That is correct,
Probably.
yes.
But it's all,
There will be quite a handful of people that have been getting resident status that will end up being non-resident status
But-
and be paying $50 more a year for their mooring.
Yeah, if I understand correctly, we're required to hold that status with the state. So
Yes.
I of course would adopt that. Okay, thanks.
I think the clarification is that we're the only organization that doesn't recognize the state definition of a resident. So I
Even though
think-
we should, so we should then. I get it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think we need to adopt that. Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion as presented, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
now can I make another motion?
Can I ask a question now? We just got our mooring out in the mail to register our moorings.
This year,
We're gonna leave
we're
it.
still under the old ordinance. This has to be changed at town meeting before it'll take effect, so it'll be for 2024.
That's why we're trying to vote on a couple of these things that lawyers already gone over with John,
Yeah.
to get it in the pipeline, to get it on the warrant, to get it voted on.
So I'm gonna work with Patrick in the next week or so to get everything written to accomplish everything we're trying to do. We're gonna end up having a special meeting at the end of this month to review the writing to approve them, and then they will go in front of the select board for approval for town meeting
The
warrant.
harbor committee will have a special meeting.
Yeah.
Chris,
I'd like to make a motion to void the grandfathering of moorings said in our ordinance.
It's not really grandfathering. It says specifically in our ordinance that anything prior to 2017 does not have to register.
So to remove the control date.
You want to remove the control date and allow us to be able to charge everyone to register their mooring.
It's not the charging, it's so everyone has to
Yes.
report their mooring. Like they do in the harbor. So where everyone's commercial not at this point will have to follow the same, and they're already supposed to name them and do it, but this way they have to fill out the form, prove they've been inspected. And follow the same guidelines as the moorings and all the harbors.
good point. Any other discussion? Is that a motion, Chris?
Yep.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded that we remove the quote unquote grandfathering clause of pre 2017, 2017 registration requirements. Okay,
I have a question. John, are you uncomfortable with the language of grandfathering and want to change that language? In
The
the-
word grandfathering will not be used because it's not in our ordinance, but
Control date.
it's a control date that was put in there. That anything prior to that date was not to be charged. We're gonna re-language it with the lawyer. And we will be back in a couple of weeks to review that language, and if you guys approve it, it will go to the selectmen.
So then the motion is to remove the date language as opposed to introduce new language.
Motion is to remove control date on the moorings.
With the
Okay.
intention of working with our attorney.
Well,
to-
yes, this is just to get the language drafted to move ahead
Okay.
with that.
I understand.
not-
Thank you for, yeah. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Thank you.
everyone understand the motion? All in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Opposed, it's carried. Okay. Very good, guys.
Is there any other ordinances that I know Story had put something forward? Didn't you? You emailed me?
No, I don't think so.
No.
But I have a question.
Yeah.
Where do we stand with the garden thing?
I don't know. Didn't they go before the selectmen?
Donna and I went, and Jim, I think, went to the selectmen. And it wasn't clear that they had made any changes to their original recommendations, like the berm and everything. And the selectmen generally felt that it needed a lot more review because they kind of liked the village green the way it was, and
I think that's basically the way we all feel right now. I think it's in limbo, so.
John McCauley brought up and asked at the last selectmen's meeting if anything has happened yet. And they haven't come back to us or looked to us to help make any changes. I haven't heard anything from the garden.
it kind of
Association.
seemed like they went to the selectmen to get it approved, and they were supposed to come back to us.
Right.
And the selectmen had no idea about our conversation.
And address the concerns.
Right.
It's the right observation, so. Any other topics anybody want to bring up, Jim?
Just curious what's happening with the construction down there.
The construction unfortunately is held up by, best of my knowledge, by freshwater stone and the granite.
I thought we weren't facing it with granite. I thought we were.
Yeah, it's a veneer.
But we changed the veneer because they couldn't get the right color veneer. But
Well, it
now
was
we can't-
originally solid granite blocks and we changed to a
Right.
concrete with a veneer on it. And that is the holdup at this point.
And we also didn't, as I recommended and prior to that, we went in a rush to get the lowest bidder and didn't put time constraints or financial constraints on not getting the job done, so. I don't think they're in a real rush.
I've been told February is when the granite will be ready.
And that, I mean, we shouldn't start these projects that affect all of the communities and other communities without a control date or, you know, it should be like, everything should be gathered before you tear down, you know, the bridge.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but we made a major blunder.
I thought it was gonna be all cement. I thought we did away with it.
I thought the stone is just a decorative thing, and I didn't realize it had anything to do with the structural
I
well-being.
think it is.
It doesn't, but some of the structures go through the granite to go into place, the railings and.
It's drilled through,
It's-
so they're gonna pre-drill it, and then these are facades that are held by stainless that are connected, you get what I'm saying, so they're laid out.
No matter what, we're,
Yeah.
We've learned another lesson.
Yeah. especially so.
Well, how much of it can be completed without the facade?
I think you see it. That's why it has come to a hot standstill.
Basically, all I have to do is fill it now, right? Theoretically.
Well, they're gonna
They gotta re-excavate because they filled it in to help protect it while there was nothing there and.
I'll tell you, this year's going by pretty fast right now.
What's gonna happen with Seal Harbor needs their ramp that we got over here and they start the other side.
Oh, we don't have their ramp.
Whose ramp is that?
That's the ramp from the public dock.
From this public dock?
Yes,
And so we'll just keep the new one, so, what happened to the other one in Seal Harbor?
they're in Still Harbor.
Both of them are?
No, one's on its dock out in our harbor and the
Okay.
other's over there.
So we're all set with that
The
ramp.
that ramp will go out to bid to whoever is interested in it when we're done with it.
We can't use that to connect the two?
If you wanna,
Make it a little long?
60 feet apart
But just cut in half.
and flatten it out. maybe. That one does have a curve to it. So,
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. Second. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Well, I still got you all here quick. Let me look at my calendar real quick and try to get your